Carlos Sainz must be kicking himself right now. Because right now, Audi/Sauber looks like a genuine contender. Not just because of that podium, although it certainly will help. Of course, it's early days. This year remains a moving target. Some teams scaling back, others pushing hard still. McLaren, for instance, they seem determined to flatten just about everybody. Especially the likes of Zak Brown, now having actually seen Christian Horner fall, as we saw in spectacular fashion last year, and why it delayed this particular script and editorial, and then Brown addressing the crowd of McLaren fans going, "We kicked their ass!" That it's pretty clear that they're not going to stop, so thanks, Zach? But anyway, that wasn't the feel-good story from Silverstone. Although Lando Norris winning the British Grand Prix for the first time was a feel-good story, but it wasn't the biggest one. The biggest one is, of course, Nico Hulkenberg's first ever podium. Finally getting the monkey off of his back, as said by the team principal of Sauber, Jonathan Wheatley. And another monkey that might have gotten off Sauber's back is this particular podium, that it finally puts to rest anyone doubting that what we saw first at the Spanish Grand Prix was nothing other than a fluke, because it's now looking like genuine momentum. And also in Formula 1, up and down the grid, you've just got to be in it to win it, and Nico was very much in it. He showed that experience can win out in conditions like these and in any other condition, really. But I think one of the things that makes Sauber stand out particularly this year, in amongst all of the other teams in the midfield, is that right now, operationally speaking, they are really fresh and they're really clean. There's no major drama, no costly errors, although there are some that we will get to in a bit, but especially strong and clear communication. Especially with the stewards. There have been quite a few instances this year that Sauber have been on the naughty step with the FIA, and Jonathan Wheatley et al. Have been able to talk themselves off of it. That's the Wheatley effect here, people. A proven operator running a calm, sharp race weekend. It's especially evident when you look back to last year, and that year for Sauber was full of nothing but drama, foul-ups, angst, culminating in Valtteri Bottas' public branding of his 3-year tenure with the team as a straight-up mistake. But we're also coming up for a year since Mattia Binotto took over the Sauber Audi F1 operation, my estranged Italian father, as you can tell from the hair and the glasses. And thankfully, he got it moving in the right direction after what turned out to be a very long period of paralysis and political infighting. And that really made me feel quite disappointed, because Andreas Seidel, he was really good at McLaren. He helped get them back on track after a very tricky period in their history. And then when you find out he was basically having fights with Oliver Hoffmann, who was Audi's representative of the F1 project, and they were just determining who is in charge really, who is going to be leading them into the future when they arrive in 2026 proper, nothing got done. Everything stalled, and then morale probably reached an all-time low inside of Hinwil, in Germany. It probably wasn't a good time, but at least Mattia came in and steadied things almost immediately. There was some sense of direction. It just goes to show that power left unchecked can easily corrupt a person, even if they were able to do good things with Porsche back in the day, and then of course with McLaren. Now with Mattia solely in charge, and essentially free to do whatever he wants, and with Jonathan Wheatley taking over the day-to-day operations, which means Mattia can just pick and choose which races he wishes to attend, and at the moment I think he might want to attend a few more since, well, everything's going gravy for them. We've now just got something that we're just wondering, well, what can Nico do if he can qualify higher up in Q2 or better yet Q3? And then of course we got the podium, which we are all familiar with by now, and we are all pretty much happy for the guy. But what does this mean though for the team? Well, in the moment, it proves that Sauber is doing something right. Its Swansong season proving to be a feisty one instead of a pathetic and whimpering one. After 32 years of competition in Formula 1, because yes, Audi is taking full control, the Sauber name will entirely disappear, their final season was looking like to be akin to many teams that had been lost to time. Sauber just looked at that prospect and then went, not today! Because we've now gone from a situation where it would have been a miracle if they got past double figures, to now they're actually getting very, very close to Williams. I mean, P5 in the constructors standing, is that possible? I mean, it's not the highest the Sauber collective has been in their entire history. I think at one point with Sauber they got to P2, and they've been P4 on their own a couple of times. But I do feel like finishing off in either 5th or even 6th will be a huge triumph for them. And also, their 15-point haul at Silverstone came at the best possible time, because just before the British Grand Prix, the wind tunnel and ATR time allocations were reset, and at that time, Sauber were 9th in the constructors. They are set to be getting a huge bit of prize money, potentially $30 or $40 million than what they would have had they remained 9th or even fallen down to 10th. So not only will they have plenty of time to continue their development of this car and next year's car until the end of the year when it's all reset again, they'll also get a lot of cash for the troubles. And you might be wondering that post-Silverstone, could there be yet another surge forward? Might there be one last upgrade package to really just cement Sauber as a really strong upper midfield contender? I doubt it, because I'm pretty sure soon they're going to have to make the call to just cease operations for this year. Because let's not forget, Sauber are still building up for their first full season branded with the 4 circles, although technically you could call this year Audi's debut season since they now fully own Sauber and this is basically that name a badge. And whilst the car is now capable of scoring points, and the tractor-based name calling can cease, unless the tractor you wish to call it is something of a green Lamborghini, as seen on Clarkson's farm, there are still some issues that have been addressed recently which are very valid points, and even though I have talked about Sauber having a perfect, steady, transitional upward spike in this season, it's not without some concerns, that, growing pains as it were. Martin Brundle brought up a good point recently in that whilst the car is becoming more and more drivable for both Gabi and Nico, Bortoleto has been on the receiving end of rather scary failures. Another suspension failure from seemingly unexpected circumstances. And because the failures happened at opposite ends of the car, the Silverstone one happening at the front without heavy contact, Brundle compared the car's fragility to something akin to an egg, calling into question its overall structural integrity, not just the isolated parts. Now, this doesn't take away the triumph of Nico's podium, absolutely not. Again, you've got to be in it to win it, and Nico was very much in it. But in regards to Gabriel, he was certainly not in it. And it does remind us that sometimes in the pursuit of performance you can end up having components which may end up being a little bit on the brittle side. But at the same time, it certainly would have helped Sauber in terms of their PR that Nico getting P3 would have taken away some of the headlines from Bortoleto's freakish accident. It still happened, and Nico will be very happy that it did not happen to him. But it will become a bit of a lingering doubt in the German's head, and it will be remaining so in the Brazilian's head, that, yeah, sure, the car can be pretty competitive now, and that maybe Q2 appearances will be more regular than they used to be, but he might be thinking, oh, is the suspension going to fail down the straight? So I think if Sauber are going to be bringing some more upgrades, they really need to be improving the strength of those particular components. But maybe for the team, it's a risk that they're willing to take. Maybe it's best just to get things over with right now and try and figure out how to make things stronger but also just as competitive for next year, which means that they don't run into this problem in 2026, or not nearly as often as it could have been had it happened next year, and then people would have laughed Audi out the door. Sauber, as I said at the beginning of the season, before they had this upturn in pace, it's still a label for Audi to excuse any weaknesses, that it's not happening under Audi's watch. It's the Sauber thing. This is what I said back in 2024, that, oh, Sauber suck? Oh, that's not on Audi at all. No. Audi can come in once they've got their act together and then take all the glory and the credit. But given where the team was and has been, the team had to do something to move forward, much like how Williams had to do everything to move forward, following a similar concept. James Vowles and his whole break everything mindset. Sauber are doing the same thing in a way, and with Sauber scoring, I think, 35 points in 4 rounds, more than Red Bull, it proves the aggressive stance on improving the error and weight were worth it. But quality control might need a little bit of work. That, I think, is now Sauber's main goal for the second half of the season, to make sure that their processes can make parts that are less likely to break. More reliability, please, because next year, reliability is going to be a major red flag. We've had it good the last few years because the regulations have been pretty consistent, actually. There have been no major changes since 2022, and it means that all of these cars are bulletproof. That won't be the case next year. Expect there to be much bigger gaps from the front to the back, and a lot more mechanical retirements, especially in the first season of these new regs. And Audi do not want to be part of those statistics, or at least avoid them as often as possible. So yeah, strengthen the car whilst keeping it as light as possible. But I think there'll be an extra thing that will give Audi a little bit of a morale boost, and also a financial boost. Them winning the concession of increasing the cost cap, getting the cost cap raised to $220 million on the grounds of Swiss regulations and laws and staff wages there being higher due to the fact that they have to be. That was a major win for the German company, even though a lot of work is being transferred away from Switzerland to Germany and the UK, where there aren't such rules, or at least the rules aren't nearly as strict. And also, if you think about it, it might also explain why these Swiss regulations regarding pay, as to why this team has particularly suffered in the cost cap, even though the first half of 2022 looked fairly solid, that they got their ducks in a row regarding the car design. It just maybe meant that a lot of money that could have been spent on the car had to go with paying people. Because may I remind you, with the cost cap, only the 3 most expensive staff members are exempt from the cost cap. Everyone else comes under it. That's why I think Red Bull's Advanced Technologies division is such a genius move. They can keep people within the Red Bull fold, but then they're outside the cost cap. It keeps them sweet until maybe they can find a more senior position within an F1 team later, further down the line, and they don't go anywhere else. Brilliant. And then there could be even more boosting to be had with the opening of their UK facility in Bicester, which is located pretty much near what people call Motorsport Valley. It means that Ferrari are the only ones left out on their lonesome as the only F1 team with no presence at all in the region. Although rumours may indicate that could change soon in the not too distant future, to which Hamilton might be privy to but is not saying anything yet. It means that the Swiss team has access to a wealth of talent that will no longer have to consider a move away from where they might be situated at the moment. It also gains, according to this article from F1.com, much easier access to hundreds of composites machining suppliers who would be based in the vicinity and have plenty experience of working with Formula 1 teams. It really depends on how big the UK side of Sauber / Audi becomes. If it's just a little satellite division, then it will certainly be limited in terms of scope and overall things, and there'll still be some freighting costs going over to Hinwil. But if it becomes their major base of operations and Hinwil sort of atrophies in a way, kind of like what's happening in Faenza, where a lot of the important stuff, the day-to-day stuff in making the car, has been moved to Milton Keynes nearby, but it also allows Audi a little bit more access to the local universities. It might give Audi some brand new talent, fresh perspectives, and also a very willing and eager and excitable workforce that will have plenty of time to learn. And it will complement the amassing of such a big workforce. I think Andreas Seidel last year or the year before that said that their workforce had increased by 50% in such a short space of time. That in of itself is going to cause growing pains of its own, which in my opinion was laid bare when Valtteri Bottas's race engineer was changed before the Miami Grand Prix took place without him even knowing it. So many changes happening around Bottas and Zhou that they weren't privy to and they were ultimately not going to be a part of. And having this Bicester facility is going to make more and more students think that maybe they might want to work for Audi because, well, they're not going to have to relocate to either Germany or Switzerland. Can you imagine a British student trying to sustain themselves in Switzerland when things are incredibly expensive, even though the wages are good? So, yeah, I think this is an absolute win, really. This was a logical decision to have a base in the UK. It gets them more talent, and maybe they can shift things away from Switzerland. So it means that the extra money they got from the cost cap can be used more efficiently. They don't have to pay as much. And you might think that's a little bit cynical. So that means they don't have to pay staff nearly as much. But come on. Switzerland can be really restrictive, and it's a miracle that they sustained themselves in this way for this long and have stuck around and not gone belly up. In any case, the fact I am making this video, and you lot really wanted said video according to this poll, tells me something that Team Principal Wheatley also took away from the British Grand Prix. People finally give a damn about Sauber. Many Red Bull fans will be seething at the stalling and the uncertain future, the months of anguish and drama, and how Wheatley then departed them and was being potentially lined up as a successor to Horner. They are now probably thinking that we could have had Jonathan, man. We could have had Jonathan freaking Wheatley. I don't think you need me to tell you how important this is for team morale. I've had a couple of emails from Sauber engineers and people who work inside the team who have been telling me that things are only just getting better every single day. And now they've amassed the biggest amount of points they had in several years, and this is still before they become Audi. This has become a wholesome swan song for them. Because all of these mechanics, the engineers, the admin, even the people who make the tea have been scrapping at the back for the last few years, and then having to look to their leaders Seidel and Hoffman bickering amongst themselves, whilst on track, nothing's happening. Either unreliability befalls them, or just straight up lack of pace. Now though, they can look to that trophy that will be arriving in their trophy cabinet in the next few days, and think, yeah, we can do something. That's the same feeling that I got when we saw Carlos Sainz get that podium in Brazil 2019. The first trophy that McLaren had had in a good few years. That is the best way to improve morale at a team and also stop people from maybe considering their options elsewhere. It's going to make people stay because there might be more to come. For those people who are thinking, oh, that Lego trophy is terrible, I think it's pretty cute. Nico doesn't seem bothered at all. And it's unique. It might be the only ever Lego trophy that we see, and I just just don't understand the double standards here, that we get the Lego cars around Miami and people think it's the best thing since sliced bread, and then we get these cute little trophies and people think it sucks. Like, come on. Outside the F1 team itself, this will speak to investors and Audi's board immensely. Getting a third right now shows that the money already spent is producing results. An encouraging sign too for backers like the entire country of Qatar that have bought into the project ahead of the relaunch. Basically, what we've just witnessed is a proof of concept. It validates Mattia and Jonathan as leaders as well as those they have brought in. It buys credibility with investors. Okay, I will address the engine in the room, and that is, of course, the engine, because why else would I change the elephant in the room to the engine in the room if I wasn't going to be talking about the engine? And even though Mattia Binotto has come in and he has a vast amount of experience with that particular area of a Formula One car, he is acknowledging that this engine is not going to be the best one out of the gate, that it may start 2026 a little bit on the back foot, or at least certainly not close to maybe something that Mercedes or even Honda could produce. Binotto admits as much. He's at least being honest, and that maybe competitive results won't be coming their way in terms of power circuits until maybe 2027. But that's okay. We are not going to be in an engine freeze phase anymore, where you are in 2022 is where you're going to be in 2025. Which is why Renault have been struggling in the last few years and why they ultimately pulled the plug. But testing, according to Binotto, is already underway, with race distance runs completed, intense development ongoing to close the gap, and the arrival of this UK base will only further accelerate that innovation, as well as this not often talked about deal Audi has struck with Mechachrome to manufacture necessary parts. I know what you're going to be thinking. Mechachrome law? Really? The same Mechachrome that makes unreliable engines in Formula 2 and Formula 3, that Mechachrome? Nevertheless, Audi are trying something new, and they are working with somebody and some companies that already know how to produce and manufacture parts for a Formula 1 engine. Audi's not doing this entirely from scratch now, and its prior work with Renault has manifested plenty of world titles over their time. But because Renault's closing the engine program and Mechachrome will have suddenly nothing to do, Audi's become its headline customer, which means that it will have first dibs and first priority. It'll mean faster turnaround on parts and, most importantly, quality control, rather than fighting for production slots. So let me make this clear. Even though Mechachrome is manufacturing the engine, Audi will still be assembling it in their respective headquarters. That they will be the ones putting it together. They can just shift off the CAD designs and all of that other stuff to France. They can then come back with the parts, and then they can just put it together. It's one less thing they need to worry about. And finally, there is the matter of the drivers, because already I have been able to sense that Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hulkenberg are the most adorable and wholesome pair on the grid right now, by a long shot. You think Carbono is wholesome? Just wait until you hear about Nicoletto. As some of you who hail from Brazil have pointed out to me, Gabriel has thrown himself entirely into the project, successfully building a bond with his more experienced teammate, him ultimately calling Nico the best teammate he has ever had. As for Nico himself, he adores Gabriel, calling him fast as hell, and with the German headed toward the end of his career, there's no desire to outshine his teammate for selfish reasoning. No, you just get the sense that even if Audi produce a car which is competitive and could get podiums or maybe a victory, there will be no bad blood between them because they're at different stages of their career. Nico, I think right now, is just happy to be in Formula 1, to have gotten a second chance after 2019 when he got dumped by Renault and then had to make do with being a super sub for Racing Point and Aston Martin, which was nice to see. And given that he got a P3 at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, and he qualified P3 when he was a super sub in 2020, that was now foreshadowing. If this turns out to be the peak of his career with Sauber stroke Audi for Nico, finally getting a podium, I think he'll be happy with that. Just to be able to compete at nearly the age of 40, he said so himself in many interviews, he knew he hadn't lost his competitive pace, and now we've got proof. And also the sight of Bortoleto rushing past Norris to congratulate his teammate, even though he'd already changed into his regular gear. It was just there. He said so on the radio that, "I'm going to be there on the podium, mate. I'm going to be there. I want to share this with you." It was so heartwarming and special. It's just like, I love this kid. That's why Gabi is my other boy. And you can tell that these two are feeding off of each other's motivation. It's just going to be spiraling upwards, which is exactly what Audi needs right now. And eventually, Bortoleto could go on to lead the team, and Hulkenberg might just go off into retirement, having maybe gotten Germany interested in Formula 1 again. This first podium since Sebastian Vettel's with Aston Martin in Baku a few years ago. And this Sauber group, Audi suddenly looking pretty competitive and some potential to be as high as 8th in the constructors in their first go, which wouldn't be all that bad. It just might make Germany interested and curious about the sport again after years of a lack of interest. And if Mick Schumacher gets the deal with Cadillac, even more so. It might give us the opportunity of the Nürburgring returning to Formula One, or better yet, Hockenheim. And hey, if Nico decides that he wants to carry on for a little bit longer, I don't think Sauber will mind. Right now, Nico is their very best friend, and probably the best thing that has happened to them in their latter history. So ultimately, what does Nico's podium mean for Audi? Well, it gives them a live performance benchmark in an actual Grand Prix as to where they are right now and where they could go, including Bortoleto's suspension failure. So it wasn't great for the kid, but the kid might stand to gain from this in the long run because, well, they won't be doing that again anytime soon. It also gave them valuable data, aero, and cooling information as they were contesting for a legitimate podium. Yeah, you might be thinking, oh, it was to do in the rain, but look at the other burns from the stern that Nico was able to do. They were able to do that in the hot weather of the Spielberg Austrian Grand Prix. They were able to do that on merit, and this, again, was on merit. And then with Bortoleto continuing to do some Pirelli tyre testing for 2026, it provided him maybe a little bit of a rebound in terms of his sense of confidence and his will to keep on going. And given where they are in the constructors right now and what wind tunnel time they've got for the rest of the year, they've got the best of both worlds. They've got more prize money coming in, which will alleviate Audi's responsibility in pumping in some cash because the team is starting to earn more and more money. And it certainly helps now that every single Formula One team, yes, including Sauber, is turning a little bit of a profit. They are not hemorrhaging cash. And it also provides valuable and positive headlines and making people care about the project. It means that more people may care and take an interest in Audi. Let me know in the comments, by the way, if you are curious about maybe supporting Audi next year. Because, well, as you can tell with the cap, I bought some Sauber merch, even though I thought I would never buy anything with that logo on it, and it's also generating headlines that will be attracting more and more sponsors, and that will certainly help because I wouldn't be surprised if the Sauber car has a few more logos toward the end of the year. I think that'll be very interesting. So yeah, Audi's going to be starting next year with a better technical team, some extra support, and also sharper talent, because Gabriel's coming on leaps and bounds. Nico has not lost it one bit, even though he's the third oldest driver on the grid, and by the time the contract ends, he'll be approaching 40. But as we've seen, Nico doesn't give a damn about his age. They're not going to be going into next year with wishful thinking. That trophy means a lot to them. And something that meant a lot to me was getting to sample Silverstone weekend from a special VIP suite which I shared with you all in my latest vlog. To find out what it's like to be part of that rarefied atmosphere, watch this video next straight after this one.